That's not a euphemism, and it's not meant to sound mysterious. I've been there since I was 21, sorting, scanning, moving things from one place to another so other people can forget about them. It's stable work, quiet work, the kind of job where nothing interesting is supposed to happen. Every year, around mid-November, I get rotated into a seasonal role. Officially, I'm assigned to the no-response division. Unofficially, I'm the person who sorts the letters addressed to Santa that will never receive an answer. Most people don't realize how many of those come in. Kids still write physical letters, parents still encourage it, schools still make it an activity. By the time those envelopes reach us, they're already dead-ends addresses that don't exist, names that aren't real, return labels written in blocky pencil handwriting. The machinery flags them automatically. They get pulled before routing and dropped into our department. We don't respond to them. We don't forward them to charities. We don't read them in full. That last part is the rule. It's been a rule since the late 90s, according to my supervisor, long before I started, long before she did. The explanation they give during training is simple and rehearsed. Children sometimes write about personal matters in their letters, family issues, home situations. It's not our place to read private information that was not meant for us. So we skim, we confirm it's addressed to Santa, stamp it as no response, log it, and file it away. You're allowed to read the opening line, maybe two. You're not allowed to finish it, ever. People joke about it the first year. They think it's superstition, or some old HR leftover nobody bothered to remove. Somebody always asks what happens if you do finish one. The supervisor never answers directly. She just says it results in immediate termination. I believed that was all it meant for a long time. I stopped finding the rule, funny, 3 Christmases ago. That was when I learned what happens after termination. It's a tight-knit secret among the people who get roped into it, and you're only told after everyone thinks you won't say anything to anyone. They don't escort you out with security. They don't make a scene. You're just told to gather your things and leave the building. Your credentials are deactivated sometime later that day. Your access to internal systems disappears. To everyone else, it looks like you quit or got fired for something mundane. What happens next isn't in any handbook. It starts the same way every time. Within a day or two, the person mentions they feel watched. Maybe they laugh it off at first and blame stress. Then they describe something taller than it should be, standing too far away to make sense. A shape, a silhouette that doesn't move when they move. By the 4th or 5th day, they stop laughing. They all describe it the same way. A black figure, at least 12 feet tall, proportioned wrong. Hands stretched to its shins, standing upright like it's pretending to be human. It wears a Santa hat, a real one, red, white trim. Cheap felt. The hat never changes. It never falls. It never reacts to weather. It doesn't chase them. It doesn't speak. Every day, it's a little closer. It can stand across the street. At the end of a grocery aisle, on a sidewalk in full daylight. Other people walk through it like it isn't there. Nobody notices it. Nobody reacts. That's how they know it's meant only for them. The stalking lasts 12 days. On the 13th, they die. The post office doesn't acknowledge the connection. Officially, those people suffer unrelated accidents or medical emergencies. Unofficially, nobody in no response breaks the rule anymore. Except, I did. Because some of the letters aren't normal. Every once in a while, rare, but often enough that we dread it, you find a crumpled envelope sealed with red wax instead of glue. No postage, no return address, just a name written carefully in pencil, as if the writer didn't want to risk spelling it wrong. Those letters are the reason the rule exists. We're meant to set them aside in a locked drawer and alert supervision immediately. No logging, no scanning. They are taken at the end of the month. Every single one of them is addressed to Santa. I'd seen 11 in my entire career, before last week. The 12th had my nephew's name on it, same first name, same last name, even the way the pencil curved on the first letter looked wrong in a familiar way. My brother has a 7-year-old son. He writes his name the same way on birthday cards, too big at the front, trailing smaller letters like he gets tired halfway through. I didn't open it right away. I stood there for a long time, staring at the seal, telling myself coincidences happen and kids share names. I told myself that red wax meant nothing, that plenty of children have uncles who work at the post office. I used a sick day and left immediately and drove straight to my brother's house. He laughed when I told him the envelope, told me I was overthinking it, said his kid probably found his wax stamp he used for work and wanted to be fancy. When I asked if his son had written a letter to Santa recently, his smile faded just a little. He said yes, but he didn't see anything alarming, just the usual stuff, toys, candy, video games. He asked why I cared so much. I didn't have an answer that didn't sound insane. That night, I dreamed about the drawer at work. It was open, and the letter was gone. The next morning, I broke the rule. I told myself I'd only read enough to confirm it wasn't really his. I told myself I'd stop if it got personal. I told myself I wouldn't finish it. I was wrong. The letter was written in pencil, neat but deliberate. No spelling mistakes. No childish phrasing. It thanked Santa. It thanked him for the last gift. Not for toys or games, but for a piece of candy that had made Mommy stop crying. It said Santa had been right that, doing the bad thing worked, and nobody knew. It promised that this time would be even better. That stealing wouldn't be enough, and hurting animals felt too small now that he understood what Santa really wanted. It listed sins like chores. It ended by asking what Santa wanted next, because Christmas was coming and he wanted to be a good boy. I don't remember putting the letter down. I only remember my supervisor standing behind me, telling me to hand over my badge. She didn't argue, she didn't yell, she looked tired, like she'd seen this exact situation before, and hated it every time. She told me I was terminated for violating confidentiality policy and that I needed to leave the building immediately. She didn't warn me about anything else. I didn't leave work right away. I sat in my car in the parking lot for almost an hour, with the letter in my lap. I drove to my brother's house because there wasn't anywhere else that made sense to go. He answered the door with his son still awake behind him, cartoon voices echoing down the hallway. The normalcy of it made what I was holding feel obscene, like I'd brought something diseased into a clean room. I asked if we could talk privately. He hesitated, then stepped outside with me, shutting the door behind him. "Why are you holding Lucas' letter?" We were standing on the porch. The light above us flickered every few seconds. I hadn't noticed it doing that before. "It came to my work," I said. "I need you to read it." "You opened my kid's mail." "Yes, but you'll understand when you open it." That made it worse. Somehow, he took the envelope from my hand and turned it over, frowning at the wax seal. "What is this? Some kind of joke?" "Seriously, read it." He broke the seal with his thumb and started scanning the page. I watched his eyes move, line by line. When he stopped, he stared at the paper like he'd lost his place. "This isn't funny," he said. "I know." He folded the letter once. "Did you write this shit?" "No." "Did you put him up to this?" "No." "You really expect me to believe this came from a real?" He stopped himself, laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You can't be serious, Matt. I got fired today. I wouldn't risk my job for something like this." "That doesn't help." I tried not to read it. I wasn't supposed to. But when I saw his name, "You're talking about rules again," he said. "That stupid Santa rule you're always on about this time of year." "It's not stupid," I said. "It's a thing for a reason. So now my son is the reason." His voice was louder now. Behind him, the TV laughed on cue. "You think my own son is fucking hurting people?" "No," I said quickly. "I think something is asking him too." He stared at me, waiting for a grin that didn't come. "You're fucking sick, man," he said finally after staring daggers at me. "It's been happening to other people. Coworkers. Once you finish one of these letters I took, this is enough. You don't get to come into my house and say ridiculous shit like this. Just listen to me. Just for once. Can you? You need help, Matt. Seriously, you're fucking crazy. There's a thing." My voice dropped without me meaning it to. "It starts watching you. Tall. Wears a Santa hat. 12 days and then get out. Don't talk about my son like that. Don't talk to me unless you get your shit together." "I'm not talking about him," I said. "I'm talking about what's coming." He opened the door behind him. "Stay out of my fucking house. And don't come back until you can admit you made this up. But Christmas, don't," he said. "Do not bring that bullshit into my home." I stepped back further onto the porch. He didn't hesitate before closing the door. The lock clicked. Behind the door, my nephew laughed at something on the TV. In the silence that followed, the flickering porch light finally went out. At the end of the street, something tall stood perfectly still, waiting. I left my brother's house, not taking my eyes off of it. When I got home, it stood across the street from my apartment, partially hidden by a lamppost that only reached its upper thigh. The Santa hat sat perfectly on its head, bright red against a body that swallowed light instead of reflecting it. I didn't see it move. I watched from my living room window until my eyes started to hurt, until my reflection layered itself over the dark glass and made me doubt the shape even existed. When I looked away and looked back again, it was still at the end of the street, standing just past the stop sign. Cars drove past it without slowing. Headlights cut through its legs and came out the other side, unchanged. A woman jogged directly through the space it occupied, earbuds in, breath fogging in the cold air. She never noticed the height of the thing she'd passed. That night, I didn't close the curtains. I wanted to know if it would approach while I slept, if it only moved when I wasn't looking. It didn't move. The Santa hat was the brightest thing on the street. On the second day, it was closer. It stood across from my building beneath a street lamp. The light didn't reveal anything, only traced its outline like something pasted onto the world. I left early, before sunrise, telling myself that if I passed it quickly enough I could prove it couldn't interact with me. As I walked by, I felt pressure behind my eyes, like I was remembering something I'd forgotten. It lasted less than a second. When I turned, it was still behind me. That night, I dreamed of red wax softening in my hands. On the third day, it was in the parking lot. It stood between my car and the exit. I walked around it without stopping. I remember feeling angry, more than afraid angry, that it was allowed to exist like this, violating the basic rules of proximity and consequence. A man leaned against my car to tie his shoe. His shoulder passed through its leg without comment. For a moment, by habit, I drove toward the post office before remembering I no longer worked there. On the fourth day, it began appearing indoors. I saw it at the end of the frozen food aisle, its head nearly brushing the hanging signs. People pushed carts through it. A child ran past me laughing when the cold air hit their face. I left my groceries and walked out. That night, Christmas music started to feel like a warning. On the fifth day, it followed me to my brother's street. It stood on the sidewalk in front of his porch, feet almost touching the step. I watched my brother walk through that space later, holding his son's hand, not slowing, not noticing. The porch light turned on. The door closed, the thing didn't leave. On the sixth day, I stopped trying to explain. I called the non-emergency line, a therapist, anyone who might give this a shape that wasn't fatal. I talked about stress, unemployment, anxiety. Everyone heard exactly what they needed to hear. That night, it stood at the edge of my building's lot, closer than before. I closed the curtains for the first time and still woke up, convinced something brushed the walls. On the seventh day, it was in the elevator to my apartment. The doors opened, and it was already there, folded just enough to fit. A woman stepped in beside me and leaned against its leg without realizing it, frowning slightly at the unexpected cold. I got off 2 floors early. The rest of the ride creaked like it was carrying more weight than it should. On the 8th day, it appeared in reflections first, in the dark screen of my phone, in the microwave door, always behind me. When I turned, it was in the room where it needed to be to remain just out of reach. I never heard it breathe. On the 9th day, it stopped giving me space. I turned corners and almost walked into it. I started holding my hands out in front of me, afraid of colliding with it like misplaced furniture. That night, it stood at the foot of my bed and leaned forward just enough to make the Santa hat dip. I didn't sleep. On the 10th day, I tried to leave the city. I drove until the roads thinned and the lights fell away. I locked myself in a rest stop bathroom just to breathe. It waited by the sinks. I turned around and went home. On the 11th day, it no longer followed me. It waited in places before I arrived, positioned where it made sense, as if it had always been part of the layout. If it has eyes, I never saw them. If it has a face, I don't think I would survive seeing it. On the 12th day, it stood in my bedroom. Not at the foot of the bed. Closer. It bent at the waist until its head filled my vision. I smelled wax. I smelled paper. The Santa hat slid forward just enough that I thought I might finally see what was underneath. Then it folded itself back into the corner, impossibly small, and waited with me until morning. Tomorrow is the 13th day. He's standing just a few feet in front of me now. I'm going to die tomorrow night. I need help. Anything, please.